Hi, my name's Steve Maher. I'm the ergonomics guy, and I have a case study today on how we helped a pregnant woman work more comfortably in the workstation. So I'd like to show you what we did and how we helped her out. So we'll jump right in. So this is a woman that I worked with recently who was pregnant, and pregnancy is really interesting biomechanically because there's so many changes that go on. And the thing is, there's not a lot of information in the ergonomic literature about what to do with pregnant people, pregnant women. And so it's pretty interesting because when you look at the ergonomic diagrams, right, they tell you to sit with your feet on the floor and your knees just a little bit below your hips, and then they want your pelvis kind of tilted forward just a little bit, and that allows your spine to come into this shape, and then your head is balanced here, and then your arms kind of hang like that, and that person has a lot of kyphosis. But you can see that there's a big difference. If you're sitting in this straighter position, like all of the ergonomic literature tells you to do, the problem is you're not going to last long, because as the baby gets bigger, as your stomach gets larger and larger, right? There's not as much room. And if you're trying to sit up straight close to that 90 degrees, you're going to get squished, right? You're not going to be able to breathe because your abdomen is going to push up onto your rib cage and decrease your lung volume, so you won't be able to breathe as easily. It can also put more pressure on your bladder, so you're going to have to go to the bathroom even more often than you were before. It can also cut off circulation to your legs. So sitting in that position that all of the ergonomic literature tells you that's how you're supposed to be, I think is actually not good for you. So what do you do? So as the baby gets bigger, what you want to do is change the angles of the chair. And so what we can do, and let me just show you some of the problems that I see here. So one, she's trying to sit up pretty straight, and so she's not accommodating the larger mass in her stomach. So that's causing some issues. The other thing is that the desk is actually just a little bit above her elbows. Her elbow is actually here, so she's reaching up just a little bit, and that's going to put more pressure here on your forearms. And one of the things that can happen in pregnancy is you can get gestational carpal tunnel. So you retain fluid, there's more pressure in that carpal tunnel, and that can compress the nerves and cause numbness in your hands. Well, you don't need to get any help by putting pressure on your wrist. So having the keyboard too high is going to increase that pressure. And then the obvious problem is her eyes are way up here, right? And her screen is way down there. So she's looking down all the time. And that is just going to put a whole lot of stress on her neck and shoulders here. So, and then if we look over here, another issue is that as she gets bigger in diameter this way, she has to reach into the keyboard like that. So she has to reach in at an angle, and that's going to cause her to do what's called ulnar deviation of the wrist. So her elbows are going to tend to abduct or come away from her body, and then she's going to be reaching back in this way towards the keyboard, but since the keyboard is straight, then she's going to hold her wrists out to the side like this. And so she's going to have this ulnar deviation. And that is a problem because it puts more stress on the carpal tunnel and all of the muscles of the forearm. And you can feel this if you put your hands out in front of you, bring your thumbs together with your elbows at your side, bring your thumbs together, and your wrists may start to feel a little awkward already. Then if you twist your wrist out towards your pinky just a little bit further, you'll feel a stretch on the thumb side and a tightness on the pinky side. So, and then if you just bring your elbows out a little bit further from your side, you can see how that gets worse. There's more stress and discomfort in your wrist. And so working in that position can cause some issues. So what we did is we changed some things out for her. The first thing we did is we changed out her chair. So we got her a more adjustable chair. In the big adjustment difference is that this seat pan, the part she's sitting on, will actually tilt up and down. And so we can change it depending on how we want to. And what we want to do is give this seat pan a downward tilt. Okay, so it's going down a little bit. Whoops, going down. Getting a little too much drawing like John Madden here. But the idea is we raised her hips up a little bit higher so her legs are going downhill. And then we take the seat pan and we make it fairly parallel to her legs. And that takes off any pressure that she is going to get right here at her thigh, right in that popliteal fossa. And so by opening that up, it does a couple things. It creates space here for the baby. It also then, by lowering her legs this way, it puts slack on the hamstrings, which are the muscles here. That allows her pelvis to come into more of this position so that there's space, right? And that brings her trunk this way. So there's a much greater space here than if she was trying to sit at 90 degrees. Because if she was trying to sit at 90 degrees, she would be more like this, and there'd be much less space here. So by opening up that angle, we've created space for the baby. Okay. Then the other thing we can do is we can change the angle of the backrest to accommodate that more open thigh trunk angle, right? From here to here, we can open the angles up on the chair so that she can sit in a good supported position and still and not have a big gap, right? So she's not just putting pressure on her back and her butt right here. The other thing we did is we moved her to a desk that had a keyboard tray. And the advantage to that is we can move the keyboard tray up or down to whichever level we want. And the big difference is it has a knob right here that allows us to change the angle. So you'll notice that the keyboard platform is actually going downhill now. And so instead of putting pressure on her wrists here when she was up on the desk, what that allows us to do is to have the keyboard the same angle as her wrists, which keeps them nice and straight. So she's not going into a lot of extension. And prolonged extension can cause trouble at the elbow here, but it can also increase pressure on the carpal tunnel right there. So by changing the angle of the keyboard, she can keep her wrists much straighter. The other things that we did is we swapped out her standard keyboard right here, that is big I-shaped keyboard, and gave her a sculpt. And what they've done here is they've split the two halves of the keyboard. So they're actually at an angle like this, and then the center is a little higher than the edges. And what that does is it changes the angle of her wrist. And so it supinates her wrist very slightly, so it's in a much more neutral position, but she's not reaching in as far. So now her shoulders are relaxed. She is reaching a little bit. It's just the nature of the beast, right? As the baby gets bigger, she's going to have to reach further to get to the keyboard. But what we've done is we've changed the angle of the keyboard platform to keep her wrist nice and straight. And we've gotten a wider keyboard so that she's not putting as much pressure on her wrists, and she doesn't have to reach in so far. So those are the big differences. The other thing is we changed out her laptop, which was way down here, for a big screen, which is up here. It's actually on an arm, and we didn't move it closer because I wanted to take just a picture of her. But what we would do then is bring the screen out here so that she can stay seated back in the chair and not lean forward to see it. Yeah, so that would be on an arm like that. But really what we want to do is give her more flexibility to change positions frequently, hold her in a more open position between her trunk and her thigh, and then open up the keyboard to minimize wrist extension, but also ulnar deviation. So it really wasn't hard to help her work much more comfortably. It was a matter of switching out the chair with a chair that was in the cubicle right next to her, and then using the equipment that was already installed on the desk and providing that for her. So ergonomics, it doesn't always have to be a big issue. It can, a lot of times there are some simple fixes. So if you're having trouble with your workstation or are interested in fixing your workstation to be as comfortable as possible, please let me know. Contact us. I'll put our link down below. Let us know. We can do a video analysis like this, or we can do one-on-one ergonomic assessments with a live video feed via Skype. And if this was helpful, please share it with your pregnant friends. I think pregnancy is really cool. I have 2 kids, so I like that. And also, if it is helpful, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much.